Hello, and welcome to the Back Catalog Listening
Hello.
Party. My name is Mother Banjo, one of your hosts for this show.
My name is Anthony Ihrig, the other co-host.
And it looks like we have both James in court now from the duo Moors and McCumber joining us today. Hi, guys.
Hey
Welcome.
guys, thanks for having us.
We're so happy to have you here. And yeah, it looks like folks are joining the party right on time.
Love it. Perfect.
Reed, Connie from Richfield, Chris, it's Beer Friday. Okay, beer. Alan, dark and stormy day in Dallas. I hope. I don't know if you mean that it's actually dark and stormy, or if you mean the drink a dark and stormy. But although he has his gin and tonic, so probably the former. Tony, what are you drinking on this Friday afternoon?
I'm going to Petaluma, California for a little Lagunitas IPA.
Nice.
A little kind of stormy here too. It's just kind of a nice Friday afternoon beverage.
You know, Chris said it was Beer Friday, so you got the memo.
I did.
And James, what are you drinking?
I'm actually taking it back to St. James Gate in Dublin with a little Guinness stout. So here's to you. Sláinte, y'all.
Sláinte.
I'm doing beer Friday too, so I'm on the page with my new koozie that my friend got me. It keeps it cold for long.
Nice. Excellent. And it looks like Jason is joining us from Ray, Colorado. Connie, also from Colorado. Colorado's representing today. It's like one of the few weeks Tony is not drinking a Colorado beer, too.
That's true. That's usually what I'm doing. What about you, Ellen? What do you got going on today?
Knowing that Moors and McCumber often travel to Ireland and lead a tour there, I thought I'd also get on the Irish train. But instead of beer, I got whiskey.
I love it.
Nice.
Well, cheers to
Some
all
Jameson.
of you. And I see our friend Ann is here,
Cheers.
who I think you guys
Hey,
really
Ann.
know.
Hey, yes.
Great to see ya.
Great to see you, Ann. And thanks to everybody for being here. If you're new to the show, the Back Catalog Listening Party is a weekly happy hour where we spend an hour with great artists like Moors and McCumber and listen to an album in their back catalog, dive deep, and kind of go back into the liner notes, hear the stories behind the songs, all that great stuff. So it's a conversation not just amongst us, but amongst you as well. So if you're out there and you have questions for these fellas, and you just throw them in the comments, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
And before we get started, I do want to just do this, because this is what came in the mail today.
Oh,
Look at you.
Nice.
That's embarrassing.
Our little cover story on our very own back catalog host, Anthony Ihrig, and actually talks quite a bit about the Back Catalog Listening Party. So big thanks to Minnesota Bluegrass Magazine.
Shout out to Derek Johnson from Monroe Crossing. He did a great job writing that. And I'm probably wearing the exact same outfit. I have changed since then, but anyways.
Well,
it's your show outfit.
If anybody saw our online concert on Wednesday, I've got the same thing on too. So our fans pretty much knows, like, yeah, Court's still wearing the same thing. Okay, yeah.
Well, it's funny because in normal times, pre-COVID times, when folks, toured and played shows every night, you might only have one or two gig shirts, right? That, like, your nice outfit, right, on the road. But, you're playing in different places. The problem with live streams is that the same people see you. So you actually have to own more than one gig outfit, I guess.
At least tops.
That reminds me. One of the very first gigs I played was over at Ginkgo Coffee in St. Paul, and I was opening for Ellis Paul, and
nice.
And I had met him once at a festival, and here he was. I knew he was touring from all the way from the East Coast, and here he came in his Honda Civic, and he had a little suitcase downstairs, in the green room as we're getting ready, and he pulls out two shirts, and they are horribly wrinkled. I mean, like, they look like museum pieces from the 50s. And he pulls them both out and he goes, "Which one do you think I should wear?" And I was like, I think horse apiece.
Little did you know, you were thinking, man, when I start touring full time, I'm gonna have just my shirt. My shirt's gonna be so pressed. Little did you know, you were just getting a glimpse into your future.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a bitter pill to swallow. That's for sure.
Oh, good times. Well, hello to all the folks joining us. It looks like folks are joining from all over Minneapolis, Colorado, again representing Oregon.
Hey, Shane. Hey.
Faith from Bend.
Faith, yes. All good, some friends of ours. Love it.
And my parents from Litchfield, Connecticut. So Everyone, and I love Chris's comment. One of our regular listeners says GQ is calling Anthony. So, just saying.
They've lowered their standards. Apparently.
Well, this is Minnesota Bluegrass Magazine. It's not. It's like
it's a stepping stone, buddy. You're on your way now.
This is bluegrass chic, folks.
That's it.
My kindergartner gave me this too today, which is I'm showing
lovely.
Off.
Nice.
So it's like I'm wearing a whole new outfit, really.
Yeah, pretty much. A button does that.
It takes little bling.
One piece of flair.
Yes.
One piece of flair.
Well, let's dig into the show for folks who looks like probably a lot of your fans are joining us today live on the back catalog, but for folks who might not be as familiar with your music, why don't you one of you can give maybe a little 2-minute bio, or maybe you each can, you each came from different places in music, maybe talk a little bit about what brought you together and kind of what led up to making the record we're going to talk about today.
Should I flip a coin?
No. James and I, we met in 2005, the Rocky Mountain Folk Fest in Lyons, Colorado. I had just been living out there only 2 years at the time. I had toured the country with my sister as a duo for a while, and that had come to an end that spring. And then I luckily met James and kind of was like, oh, I guess this is the next chapter for what I was going to do, because when we started singing together, it was like we were siblings. And I had just come from a sibling harmony duo. And all of a sudden, James and I started singing together, and it was just immediate. We should probably do this a lot, not just nice to meet you. And it was fun singing some songs around at the festival, but let's do this as our main music pursuit. And so we did that, and it's been 10 years now as our main musical, like I said before, pursuit, I guess. We're both solo songwriters, digging it out of the dirt, and to find anybody else out there that's just enough crazy to think that they're going to be a musician full time on the road. You meet somebody else like that and you say, okay, let's partner.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the same thing. When we met, I thought, oh my God, might not have to do this all by myself anymore. And that was really a great relief. And we made a record not long after we met, really. Maybe, I guess it was a couple years after we met. We just, a lot of people would come to shows where Court would be joining me or I would be joining him, and they would want to get the CD that had us both singing. Of course, we didn't have that, and so eventually we put together some songs we had been doing in each other's shows and just spent 2 nights at a friend's studio, recorded that, and that was the only record we could sell then for like the next year. So we thought we were onto something. And the record we're talking about today is Pandemonium, and that was, I guess, officially our 4th release, but really the 3rd one where we really collaborated as songwriters and performers and from the get-go. And we had a friend, Jesse, who was doing a fundraiser for the flood that happened out in Court's neck of the woods. And we went down there to play the fundraiser, and she hooked us up with Gary Loris of the Jayhawks, who is one of my favorite songwriters of all time. So it was a real get for me to get to just listen to Gary and Karen play, and then to be the opening act. And then the next day there was a buffet for a lot of the volunteers for the event and things like that. And we sat down and played with Gary for about an hour and just kind of hit it off. And a couple weeks passed. We were working on songs for this new record, and I texted Court and I said, would it be ridiculous to see if Gary would produce this record? And he's like, do it. And
so our friend Jesse just said, here's his cell phone and give him a call. And James did. And just,
And he didn't return my call. And he didn't, actually. He didn't return the call. And I thought, that's a bummer. And then one day I got a call from Gary Loris, and he's like, hey, James, I've been in Canada working on this record with this other band. My phone didn't work up there, but I would love to work on the record with you. So
cool.
Nice.
Then it all started. So
I think when he heard us play, he was digging what we were doing. And I think, having the 2 male singer-songwriters joining forces together, he has, that's his background
territory.
Yeah, so I think he felt like he could probably lend a hand, not just be the name on the record for us. And I think he didn't want to produce it just because we thought of Gary Loris as this pedestal. He wanted to produce it if he felt like he could help us out, and he definitely did. It was a magical time in the studio with him, for sure.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, let's give folks a taste of this record, and then we're going to talk more about, the makings of the record and how you recorded it. The first track you picked to highlight on the show today is You Take Me Somewhere. And is there anything you want to say about it before we take a listen?
This is our big hit.
We've been introducing this song as our big hit for about 5-6 years now.
About 4 years too long.
I'm like
Yes,
hundreds of people have heard this song.
Well,
Excellent. And you guys can be the next 100. So
that's right. Well, let's listen to the hit. Moors
All
and
right.
McCumber, You Take Me Somewhere, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
I'm going nowhere with the push and the pull. You take me somewhere when there's nowhere to go. I've been watching the stars disappear into the sunrise. Life is changing right before my eyes. Feel like a road dog, ragged and high. Leave me by the nose, I don't need to know where or why. I'm going nowhere with the push and the pull. You take me somewhere when there's nowhere to go. I am constantly moving, following the sound. My feet are dancing, but I'm rooted in the ground. Feeling like a road dog, ragged and high. Leave me by the nose, I don't need to know where or why. Feeling like a road dog, ragged and high. Leave me by the nose, I don't need to know where or why. I'm going nowhere with a push and a pull. You take me somewhere when there's nowhere to go. I'm going nowhere with the push and the pull. You take me somewhere when there's nowhere to go. I'm going nowhere. You take me somewhere. I'm going nowhere. You take me somewhere. I'm going feel like a road dog, ragged and high. Leave me by the nose, I don't need to know where somewhere. I'm going feeling like a road dog, ragged and high. Leave me by the nose, I don't need to know where somewhere. You take me somewhere.
All right. Yeah. Moors and McCumber here with their big hit, You Take Me Somewhere, from their 2015 release, Pandemonium, which we are revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party. And I have to ask, where is that somewhere?
Well, that somewhere is where music has taken us, just everywhere. It's an unbelievable journey we've been on. That song, the lyric of that song actually started at the Moab Folk Festival. We were playing there, and we were watching our friends, the Steel Wheels, playing on the outdoor stage during the day. And, I could see the stars kind of drifting off in or coming into focus or something, and I just had a couple of those lines. And then we went off to NERFA. I think we were up at the Northeast Regional.
I
Folk.
also didn't we? Is that the time where we were working on that song till about 3 a.m. and the hotel security said, "That's enough, fellas"? In Moa.
Well, we did play there a couple times. That could have been the next go round. But yeah,
Take you
I mean
somewhere,
that has
but you
happened.
can't stay here.
That's right. But it's funny listening to that because that's really early days for me playing mandolin. That was the first song I played. Well,
Yeah.
that was probably the first song I ever took part in writing on a mandolin. So I was asking Court, is this a D? So is this a G? So that's an A. And he's like, yeah, you got it. And I'm like, okay, this.
He said, "What do you
There's a
think?"
certain kind of energy there, I think, right? When it's
And that's got to be that's a pretty early fiddle part for you.
Absolutely, but listening to that, I haven't listened to that album version in years.
Forever.
And it just started. It just brought all the memories back of us being at NERFA, the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance in. Where was it that year? It was like
Kerhonkson,
New York, and
Kerhonkson.
we were in the hotel room with our really good buddy Jim Gilmore that we've recorded a couple records with in Vermont. So I hear his voice on there, and it just reminded. And then our friends Ray and Carrie, they have a duo called Strange Birds. She's singing on it, he's singing on it, but we were all in this little hotel room before the late night showcases, working that up, and it's just really neat to hear that because we've been playing it ever since, but usually just the two of us, so you don't hear all those other voices. And then we had Peter Anderson, who's Twin Cities guy on drums, and our friend Craig Aiken on bass. And if it was up to us, we would have had Gary play on every single one of these songs. But he said, "Guys, I don't think you just want me playing my SG on every single song." We're like, "Oh man, come on."
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that it's pretty impressive, by the way, that was your first kind of recording pass on mandolin and fiddle for each of you. But you both play a lot of instruments, and for folks who've never seen Moors and McCumber live, there's a lot of instrument swapping, and I would imagine that when you guys travel, that most of your car is filled. We were talking about the small suitcases with one gig outfit. Well, you have to have that so you have space for all your instruments.
I'm like, should I bring 3 pairs of jeans or the accordion? The accordion always wins out.
Nice.
No, he's like 3 pairs of jeans or a tenor and a 5-string banjo.
And for these two banjo players, we say both.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There's never too many.
Well, I finally found the right people to work with. When
This is the right podcast.
Should it be 4 cello parts on this song and 4-string and 5-string banjo and fiddle? Yeah, go ahead, Court. Give it a shot. There you go.
There you guys
There it
are.
is. There's just
There we
a
go.
selection of that. I do see the accordion now there in the background, and
Yep.
Exactly.
that's awesome. Now, when I lived out in Colorado for a while, and honestly, that was the first place I heard like mandolins and fiddles. Being from Minneapolis, it wasn't something I was into when I lived here, but I moved out there, and I was blown away by the acoustic kind of string community, and it wasn't just bluegrass; it was everything. I was just curious how much that impacted your decision to pick up the mandolin and.
Massively for me. I was living in Nashville, 01 to 03, and I wasn't part of the bluegrass scene in Nashville or the country scene really. I was just trying to do my thing as a singer-songwriter, and so it wasn't really for me the same thing. I was out in Colorado at these festivals, same place I met James, but just a couple years before, and I'm like, oh. Wow. Yeah, so banjo and mandolin, that all sounds great in this folk music too. And I loved the camaraderie and the community of those musicians in Colorado where they, like, at least when I was in Nashville back in the day, like I did know about the bluegrass scene, but to me it felt like if you were a bluegrass player, you played bluegrass. If you were in the country scene, you played country. I go to Colorado and then all of a sudden there's Leftover Salmon and Yonder Mountain. These guys like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The banjo player's they're gonna ask the banjo player to get up and play in the rock band to sit in at a festival. And then you go to Telluride Bluegrass Fest and it's like they call it Bluegrass Fest and it's everything. Yeah. And Sam Bush is inviting everybody from any kind of act to come play with him. It is based around like these acoustic instruments that just sound so good when you're sitting out there in the mountains too, around a campfire. And I do
think that is part of
camaraderie.
it. Is there's so much outsideness to Colorado because the sun's always shining and the mountains are beautiful, and there is a lot of that sitting around with each other. Whereas growing up in Minneapolis, when you play, you're gonna be in a club You're going to be in a dark room, and you're going to want it to be loud and coming through a big amp. So there you have it.
Yeah.
Unless you're in the bluegrass community, which I, will say that was what, when I moved back from Colorado, I was just looking for what I saw out there. I was like, I was blown away. I mean, people, banjos with tabla players and, and all this kind of stuff. And luckily, if you look in the right places here.
I think that's the key. It's like a little bit more underground here. It's definitely present, but yeah, you have to be really intentional about finding it. Once you do, you're like, how did I not know this was here?
Yeah, I think it was probably through you, Ellen, here's us all hanging at the Folk Alliances, and then you knew a lot of this Twin City area acoustic players that I think, James, you'd heard some of those guys and gals' names, but I think, Ellen, you really were in that. You knew a lot of them and told us about, hey, go hear these people, then a couple doors down, you're going to love it. Because all I thought about really of Minneapolis, too, not just because I didn't know much about it till I met James, too, is he turned me on to the Jayhawks music and some of the stuff he grew up listening to. And the Jayhawks was by far the rootsiest thing that he told me he grew up listening to. Because it was like
Husker Du and Prince and
and all
Replacements, Flamin' O's.
Yeah.
So that's
Soul Asylum.
That's what I knew of that area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, of Colorado, before I moved there, I wasn't really thinking much of. I didn't look at Colorado as this music mecca until I went there and got immersed in that acoustic scene. And I did really just love how everybody was up for playing together. Different styles didn't matter, like you said, tablas and banjo, or
Yeah.
And obviously, you would always see the bluegrass players, but in Colorado, you then have at least a guy with some hippie with bongos and congas sitting in djembe,
or a dozen.
I mean, I got those friends that started bands that way. It's like, how did you end up with a djembe player in a bluegrass band? That was our friend that just. He brought the weed. I don't know. I mean, he let in the band.
Well, speaking of Twin Cities musicians, you sent us a picture of the folks who are playing on this album, and I would love to throw that up there, and you guys can let us know who's all in the picture and what they contributed to the record.
Well, starting. If we're looking at all the way on the left over there is Ed Ackerson, and this was the third record that I made with Ed, and unfortunately we lost Ed last year to pancreatic cancer, but he was I think a Minneapolis legend in the studio world, but also as a musician in Polara and BNLX, and he just had a wonderful studio there. It's called Flowers, right down on 28th and something, and the man was a genius. And what was really great about that combination, so that's Ed there on the end, and then Gary Loris, myself, and Court in the middle, and then next to Court there's Craig Aiken, bass player from New York, and Peter Anderson, also from Minneapolis, who's played in a ton of bands there. But a great crew. The studio was amazing, and what was really neat was me and Gary's personalities kind of lined up being songwriters, and Ed and Court's minds really mashed well, being just incredible instrumentalists and musicians. And so we had a lot of ideas circling around that studio for the 10 days we were down there.
That's usually what happens when I'm in the studio and I get talking about too much theory, and James puts the tape over the mouth.
That's right.
But see, that's the last place I thought I would ever want to make that record with Gary or anybody is in a city. Like, I'd like to go out I've gotten my inspiration from living up in the mountains, not in a city. And James is like, yeah, man, but this studio's so great. We gotta record there. And then the second that Ed and I started talking, like James was saying, it was like immediate chemistry, just because, Ed could come into the sound booth that I was in, and he could say something about what chord he heard or some passing note, and I understand it. I could connect with him immediately. And so when Gary and James would talk about stuff, it's definitely melody, and is that the right? Are we saying that right in that verse or that chorus? And it was definitely more like you guys were bonding over, I think you could emote better if singing it this way. So that's James and Gary could do that. And then when Ed and I did get too deep into the technical stuff of theory, Gary and James would just be like, "Hey man, let's go for a walk. we got to let these two nerds geek it out here for a little bit."
Absolutely.
But after seeing that picture with Ed, I'm so glad that I got to work with him on at least one record, because he's done a lot just on that one record for me as a musician and a studio player. Really helped inspire me and has driven me to continue to work my butt off on, making sure when I do go in the studio, like I've got the sound dialed in, and I, have the thoughts and how I want to play on somebody's song, especially on ours, obviously. Like, just he really like James said, knew his way around the studio, but he was, on top of it being a great engineer, he was a monster player. It's like, so he'd pick up the bass if I was going to play a bass part, and he's like, you could try something like this, and I'd be like, wow.
Why am I playing it?
I was like, you should do it. But then he'd be like, but this is your record. And he would encourage me. Like, he was like, I know you got this in you, man. I wouldn't have shown you this if I didn't think you could do it. And so he did that with me. He did the same thing when I was playing piano. He'd be like, have you tried it like this? I'm like, what? Okay, I'll try that if I can pull it off. Like, any instrument that I was playing on that record, even if he didn't play it, he could come in and say, why don't you try it like this? It was pretty impressive. So I'm really glad that we got to work with Ed. That's definitely been a highlight of my career so far, of making this record and getting to work with those guys.
Mine too.
Wonderful. Well, let's dig into another song, because now that we've talked so much about it, folks are itching to hear more of this record. So the next track you picked is Bend or Be Broken. And is there anything you want to say before we dig in? I know you can't give it the same intro you gave your last one. It's not your biggest hit.
This is actually our biggest hit.
That's just going to be the intro for every song.
Yes, that's right. And this song was written on a car ride from, where were we?
Carbondale, Colorado.
Carbondale, Colorado.
Castle Rock.
Castle Rock. And we had played in Carbondale the night before at a place called Steve's Guitars, and Steve's Guitars is full of Steve's guitars. And there was one in particular on the wall I couldn't stop looking at, and I asked him if that was for sale, and he said, none of these guitars are for sale. And I thought, that's insane. It's called Steve's Guitars. And he's like, yeah, what, don't you understand? They're my guitars. So, long story short, so it's this one of those there.
Nice.
And it's a 64 Harmony Rocket. And so we got talking after the show, and I talked him into selling it to me. It happened to be, the price was exactly the amount of money he owed us from the gig.
Crazy how that works.
So, Court, you didn't really come out with anything if James was the only one that came out with an instrument.
Well, he knows
he gave me the money. He's like, sure, go get it.
He's like, dude, can I get that? I need that money from the gig. I'm like, why? He's like, I'm getting that guitar. And he knows me. I'm like, awesome, grab it, get it. Yeah.
Awesome. That's a good bandmate. Yeah.
So the next day, this song just kind of came out of it, and I'll take long story short. But a couple of years ago, we went back and we played Steve's Guitars again, and I brought the guitar back because I had written a couple songs with it, and it had kind of gone quiet on me, and I knew he still loved the guitar, so I sold it back to him, and I sold it to him for the same price he sold it to me for.
It's back on the wall there.
It was kind of like a loaner. It
awesome.
ended up being a loaner, but anyway.
What a great story.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's hear this this tune, Bend or Be Broken, Moors and McCumber, here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
To get you nowhere, you'd rather be there. La da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. You bend or be broken. You bend or be broken. Wanna be my own yes man. I'll take it in stride. I'll make it my mission. Make it my life. With all I've been given, all I've been given, all I've been taught, doing is better than not. La da 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 da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. Bend or be broken. La da 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 da, la da da da
Yeah.
All right, let that verb
Wow.
ring out. That was Moors and
brings me
McCumber.
back.
That's
Bend or
so
be
cool
broken.
to hear these again.
So cool.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
That guitar, that was worth whatever you paid.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's amazing. And earlier, Court, you mentioned when Ed was showing you like a piano part or a bass part, and James, you talking about casually playing the electric guitar there. By the way, I don't know how many instruments we've actually mentioned that you guys, and I don't know how many you're playing on the record, but let's see. We have guitars of both acoustic and electric variety. We have banjos of various varieties, accordion,
Yeah.
bass, piano, mandolin, accordion. Is there any other instruments you guys play?
Did I hear a cello? In
Cello,
there?
yeah.
So,
Like
Fiddle.
very. It was like really quick, but I was like,
yeah,
I
so
swear that was a cello.
that's kind of what I've been playing. That one of the longest. That and piano I've been playing for a long time. But
Nice.
now to listen to that back against an electric guitar, trading solos on electric guitar and cello, that was pretty fun to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I know you guys can't bring all your instruments with you, but what are your core instruments
Oh, we
if
do,
you are
though.
playing live? You do. You find a way.
We bought a ProMaster van so that we could make that happen. But that's
Nice.
been sort of a foundational element for us to go out and do shows, is to bring that stuff. Because I think that's in and of itself, I mean, it's taken a while for me to get up to speed on some of those instruments, and I'm still working on it all the time. But Court's going to be able to play 6-8 instruments a night, and it's just so fluid how it changes the sound, but it's really our sound still, and it's worth bringing all that stuff. So
Yeah, the core stuff now is, well, it's going to, with this new record that's coming out this year, it's going to be a little bit more electric guitar and keyboards, because a lot of the songs are written on that. But I would say for leading up until now, it was acoustic guitar, Irish bouzouki, mandolin, fiddle, cello, banjo,
Yeah.
accordion was the core. And then keys about half the time, and then now it's going to be, so we're looking
you just mentioned like
10
9,
I know,
10
I was
things
just
is the
gonna say,
core. That's
I
the
was like-
core.
But that I think
And now
that's,
there's going to be 2 more things.
I know.
So
I
the
think,
core is like 9 things, and then when we really lay it all out, it's 12.
I love that.
But
and
if
I
we
love,
want to just strip it down, it's strictly these 7 or 9 things.
Okay,
But
so when we fly places, I usually get stopped in the airport.
Only
because
6 things.
The
then.
accordion is in my checked bag, and in Havana, Cuba, I was the only one in the group that was detained for an hour because I had the accordion in the
Wow.
suitcase.
insert accordion joke here.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
exactly.
yes.
Right.
Now, I imagine for gigs, you probably have to carry them all in. Do you ever try to get them all in over your shoulder with the straps? And
Yeah, we have
It's
back
a-
problems. Absolutely.
Bring a broom. It's a mess with Moors and McCumber.
I
it-
love that. I love that.
I'm really just a Sherpa.
I'm sure you guys could get an intern that would just follow you around to carry your instruments.
I was actually thinking what you need is like a person who doubles as masseuse or
Oh my God.
chiropractor with
Do you have a number?
with who also can help bring the gear in. That's
and
what
drive
you really
and
need.
drive the van.
And drive
And
the
drive
van.
the van.
Yeah, exactly.
We're working
and
on
cook
our
your
friend.
meals.
We're working on our friend Tim right now to see if we can convince him to do that. We'll see.
Well,
John Reed might actually, but he's making guitars now, so he might not be up for it. John Holiday has got the stamina to do it. So there's some people on here I see. Fred's strong enough. Holiday's got the stamina. I think there's people on here that we could maybe. They
excellent.
definitely have helped us load a lot of stuff in over the years, though. All these people I'm naming.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Well, and I love that one thing I love about you guys, because I saw you early, like when you were pretty new to being a duo at somewhere, I think here in town or in Minnesota or maybe up in Duluth. And I remember being struck by, I'm like, oh, their harmonies are so great and the songs are so good, which didn't surprise me because I had known James and his songwriting. But the two of you together were very magical. And you had a couple instruments at that time. It was like guitar and mandolin, and it was
Yeah,
like
that was
pretty,
the start.
That was stripped down. And then every time I saw you at Folk Alliance or at a festival, it was like there were like a few more instruments. And I love that you keep expanding that and that you're willing to like take a leap. You're like,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
he'll
this
be
is
like-
not new. This is new, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah,
and I love that.
he'll say, "Hold this. I'm just going to play this for a minute," and then I start picking around on that thing, and I'm like, "Hey, how does this go?" And he's like, "Great, now you're doing that, and I can do this, and here we go."
I'm like, all part of my evil plan.
how much does that influence your songwriting? I know for me personally that, like, you know, you can get into ruts on an instrument, you know, and like you know everything that you're supposed to know, and you do this, you pick up some strange instrument and something magical comes out, and then you realize it's just G, C, and D or something. But because it was a different approach to it, it came out. I'm curious if that has affected your songwriting.
For me, absolutely, because, you know, I'm that guy. I can make a lot out of C, G, and F with a little A minor thrown in, and then you throw a capo on and you change gears, you change keys, and you can go a long ways yet again. But then if all of a sudden you start to do that kind of thing on a bouzouki or a mandolin, then it all sounds different, and your head goes into different places and different things pop out. The muse leads you down a different direction. It sounds different. It's able to be played too differently, and then, you know, Court will have arrangement ideas that are different than what we've done in the past. And so it really does open up the world of songwriting by being able to just do even just the minuscule bit of playing on a different instrument. Really opens it up. For me,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And how much do you guys write together? I know you obviously do the arrangements and kind of flesh it out together, but do you co-write stuff, sort of sit down together to write songs, or do you just kind of pass stuff back and forth?
We do a lot of both. I mean, a lot of times I'll bring an idea, but that's just the start. Like for this record that we're releasing this year, it's going to be called Survival. And we basically took ideas that we each had, and then we just totally deconstructed them. We said, yeah, okay, this is kind of the lyric, this is kind of the music, but let's play them on some different instruments, let's try different arrangements. And that really was fascinating for us. It's something we'd always wanted to do and never had that kind of time. And now, of course, this year we had nothing but time.
And I can't imagine wanting to do it differently, because we spent a week in September together, a week in October, and a week in November before we went in the studio this time. Whereas when we were touring so much, you know, it was over 100 shows a year, and then we did those trips to Ireland, and so it was like James would say, "Hey, I've got this new song. What do you think?" And then we would work it up together and probably be playing that new song at the show that night. When we had 10 or 12 of those, we'd carve out, oh, we have 5 days off in the fall, let's make a record
in between weekends
shows.
of gigs. Yes.
And then not do anything proper to promote it, but we'd have a new record because we had new songs, and we'd go keep playing. So we'd sell however many you can from the back of your van for 100 shows. That's how many we'd sell. Very little fanfare. Pandemonium actually is the only record we've had a publicist for, and it actually did help a ton. I mean, because all of a sudden we got reviews, and we did a radio campaign, and it was like, oh wow, so this thing's got some momentum. And then we kind of, you know, not drop the ball with the other records, but kind of, like I said, we were so busy. Make a record, tour, go, 10 more songs, tour, record, carry that on.
I think we'd say now, though, too, that we kind of needed to do that to develop the skills that allowed us to make this new record. And I think going forward now, this pause has given us pause to realize, you know, these creations deserve our full attention for a longer period of time, so that everybody that we want to have hear them will get a chance to hear them live.
I think also with Pandemonium and this newest one, it's like they both of them were made similarly from the standpoint of like 10 days in the studio each time, with a dedicated producer and engineer. James and I, you know, staying in a place right near the studio. Same thing happened with this one. And Pandemonium is, I would say, if you polled our fans and friends, like that one probably comes up as one of the favorites for most people, just because I think because we spent the time to craft it right and dig into the songs, which we did on this newest one. So it's cool to actually, for me to listen to this now that we have this other new record coming out, to be like, oh, right, that's why that one's good. Yeah, because we spent the time. We surrounded ourselves with people that were better than us. I love doing that too.
Yeah.
That's
So when does this new album that you keep referencing? I know you did a Kickstarter earlier this year that was successful. Congratulations. And when do you expect it to come out for folks who are
we're just
getting excited about it?
Yeah, we're sending out the files now to our fans who supported us on Kickstarter. So we're going to let them percolate a little while, get the mojo cooking, and we're going to release it in October. So we're going to do a bunch of publicity through the summer and get everybody excited about it.
Excellent, wonderful. Well, today the music again we are highlighting is from that 2015 release Pandemonium, and we're gonna try and play a couple more tracks because, as you said, you put so much into these songs, especially records like this, that they deserve to be heard again, which is what back catalog is all about. So we're gonna hear this song, "My Heart Is Open." Is there anything you want to say before we dive in?
This is our biggest hit.
I'm sensing a theme
Quick
here.
little story about this one. So this was yet again, James was just learning ukulele, and I was
See
playing
another instrument.
I was playing accordion in the RV while he was trying to practice ukulele, and it was in Florida. It was hot and humid. We were both
terrible.
Just cooked about 5 weeks together on the road. We'd played a gig the night before and absolutely unloaded on each other because we were so frustrated at the kind of gigs we were playing at the time. It was like a 5-hour bar gig, and we just couldn't believe what are we doing? We got to start playing concerts, and that led us to being really invested in Folk Alliance for the next 7 years to get out of the bar scene, in which luckily we did. But James was like, he had it with me. Fair enough. He goes into the grocery store and he said he's like trying to pick out a grapefruit and oranges, and he's just like, "Why am I crying? Why am I so emotional? This is ridiculous." He comes back out to the RV and starts writing this song, and he messed up on one chord on the ukulele, and he's like, "Oh, I messed up. Sorry." I'm like, "No. What was that? What did you just play? Play that again." And it's this diminished chord that's in this song that kind of is like this little signature spot in the song that kind of sets up the chorus. And so James makes a lot of happy accidents that turn into he's like, "I don't know what I did. I don't even know what this is." I'm like, "Well, I'll tell you what it is, but just repeat that now, please."
You're welcome.
Awesome. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
Those happy accidents, right? When you don't really know what you're doing sometimes.
Yes.
But as I always say, if it sounds good, it is good.
That's my secret sauce.
My Heart Is Open. Moors and McCumber here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
So many people walk around this world, say the laughing boy to the smiling girl, and the years are short but the days are long. You gotta open up and sing along. It only takes a little bit of joy to overcome sorrow. We're all gonna make for a better tomorrow. My heart is open, my eyes can see. Part of you is a part of me, and a heart that beats here inside my chest is home and one with all the rest. Home and one with all the rest. A heart that beats inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. Come on. Come on. Well, there's so many answers, so many questions. And there's so many ways, so many directions. So search we will and search we must. Just listen, laugh, love, and trust. It only takes a little bit of joy to overcome sorrow. It's all gonna make for a better tomorrow. My heart is open, my eyes can see. A part of you is a part of me. Heart that beats here inside my chest is home and one with all the rest. Home and one with all the rest. A heart that beats inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. Come on. Come on. Takes a little bit of joy to overcome the sorrow. It's all gonna make for a better tomorrow. My heart is open, my eyes can see. A part of you is a part of me, and the heart that beats here inside my chest is home and one with all the rest. Home and one with all the rest. The heart that beats inside inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. My heart that beats inside my chest. My eyes can't see the heart that beats inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. My heart that beats inside my chest. Inside my chest. The heart that beats inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. The heart that beats inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. The heart that beats inside my chest. Home and one with all the rest. The heart that beats inside my chest. Is home and one with all the rest. The heart that beats inside my chest.
All right, Moors and McCumber.
I
And
love that. That's great.
oh yeah, Tony brought out the sound effects for that one.
That's
That
great.
was-
Doesn't
was
do that for
awesome,
every
man.
track. So
Yeah.
it's funny that I love that Joe pointed out. He said you guys are impossible to fit into some genre, and like Paul Simon. And I actually heard some definitely Paul Simon-ish kind of grooves going on in that.
Yeah.
And he said I would figure this one for the big hit. And
Thank
so
you,
maybe
Joe.
you are appropriate in saying this is our biggest hit
Yeah.
for every song, because they're all sounding good to us. And I will say, if you guys like what you're hearing, definitely buy the album and get it in
thanks, you
high
guys.
fidelity, because if you hear what we're hearing,
Thank you,
not through
Christopher.
the interwebs, then it's worth the purchase. So you guys can support Moors and McCumber and
Be like
support
Chris.
their music.
Be
Yeah.
like Chris Jetner here and get
Exactly.
all
I
of them.
love
You
it.
might as well just get all of them. It sounds so much better.
And I will
was
say,
awesome.
you guys
Just
have a
listen-
penchant for, and you gave me an excuse to say penchant, which I don't get to say very often.
Well
a penchant for one-word titles. Not all of your albums, but several. Someone mentioned Aisling there, and Gravity. Your new one is Survival, Pandemonium. What's with that?
I'm actually pretty
Simple.
James has got so much to say. I'm surprised by that. Maybe.
Stripping it down. Someone had the tape over their mouth for that one.
I
That's
think he
right.
doesn't get to name the titles.
That's
He
maybe
just
what
writes
it is.
He just writes the lyrics. But I just listened to a podcast called How I Built This, and it was with the Bandcamp founder. And it was a great podcast, and it makes me really happy to actually work with Bandcamp now, just knowing how they built it and what he was all about for getting it to be direct fans to musicians and to support music. Exactly how you guys are doing with this back catalog listening party, and how Bandcamp's doing it. And they've done a lot of those no-fee Fridays, and it all goes to artists. Like, it's pretty impressive that he's kind of kept that together. And he's had a lot of he was saying he's had a lot of artists and independent labels say to him, please don't sell the company, because we need you out there, because it's a direct link to for our fans and friends to be able to buy our music. What you guys are doing with this is another direct link. I know earlier before we went live, it's like you guys said you started this just to kind of stay connected during this last 13 months. And I didn't know what this was going to be like, but I love this kind of stuff. Like, it's great to be
We
able
don't
to,
always know what it will be like either. We're just kind of winging it, really.
We just love listening to music with really
Yeah.
awesome musicians.
And I will say the other part we love is, of course, having all of you out there. We love connecting with the artists and geeking out about the writing and recording, but we also love hearing from you. So folks have been active in the comments, but if you have any questions for Court or James, this is your chance. If you have burning questions about this record or about their music or about what they like to take with them in their tour bus or van, feel free to throw it in the comments before we wrap things up to make sure we get them in. One thing I want to ask is, I know you guys are busy in non-COVID times. Not only are you busy touring, as you mentioned, on the road all the time, but you also go to Ireland every year and take a bunch of fans with you. And Ireland has figured pretty big into your music, both as musical influences, the Celtic music, but also just the place. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how that came to be and when your next trip is planned for.
Yeah. Well, we got involved with this great company called Innisfree Music Tours back in 2011. We did our first tour over to Ireland, where we take fans and friends and we go over there and we experience all the sights and sounds of Ireland, which is in itself very entertaining. And then we spend the evenings in pubs listening to traditional Irish music.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
And it's just amazing, and it's blown our minds for years.
And drinking beer.
We've had a couple pints. Yep. And it's just been a great. We've actually gotten to play over there. That's an amazing pub in Doolin.
Doolin's like this epicenter of traditional Irish
It
music.
is.
That's
Yeah.
McGann's. A lot of stuff has happened in those seats there, and we were lucky enough to play a song or two there. So yeah, it's a fantastic experience. I think we've done 20 trips now, and our next.
Wow.
We just had to cancel 6 of them during this pandemic, but we have 2 coming up this fall in September and late September into early October. So those are the next ones.
So what
Fingers crossed.
What would someone expect like from this? They're coming as you're basically chaperoning you're curating their experience in Ireland.
Yeah, we basically get on a bus all together, Court and myself, and then we have a guide, an Irish guide and an Irish driver. We have a beautiful 24-passenger bus, and then we stay in really nice places, hotels and bed and breakfasts, and we spend most of the days sightseeing. And like I said, it's an amazing and beautiful place.
And do you guys
taking in the
perform?
scenery and Irish history, and then we perform for the group every day at some point, whether we're out on some beautiful beach or old church ruin. We'll play a couple songs that seem appropriate, and then for the location. And now that we've been over there so many times, we know so many musicians that always invite us up to play. But then we usually always end up doing at least one official concert at a venue on the trips, and then like I said, we're playing for our group all the time during the day, and then we do like a official concert that's open to the public and our group. Like there's one great venue we play called St. James's Church. They do concerts there in Dingle, and then we've played the Bars Folk Club in Clonakilty. So some really neat, iconic venues that have been around for a long time that we've been lucky enough to kind of get in and meet those people.
Awesome.
It's definitely been a major inspiration for both of us.
That's wonderful. And just getting to hear and play and acoustic music in a place like Ireland that is so rooted in that is really great. And yeah, fantastic trip. So there's an endorsement right there.
Yeah, John.
Holidays, no, they've been there. They've carried the gear.
They said that. They said you have to carry all their gear and buy them beer and make sure they get home at night. So it sounds like
That's only half true. That's only half true.
So they're your chaperones, not the other way around.
I was about to say, I think if you say we're chaperoning them and they think of me as a chaperone, I don't think many people would go on those trips.
We take care of you till 9 p.m.
Yeah,
At which point we might need your help.
Sounds good.
That sounds amazing.
If folks want to find out about it, again, you can go to their website, moorsandmccumber.com. But we want to squeeze in one more song, and this is the title track of the record. So we need to hear this one, the one-word title, Pandemonium. Is there anything you want to say before we dive in?
At the end of this song, there's some Rumi poetry that's being spoken, and it was one of those things. Gary Loris had a Rumi book in his studio, and James just opened it to this one page, and it ended up being this passage that we sing at the end of this. No reason. I still don't know why we ended up doing it, but it's really, really neat, and it seems like it fits. This song is we don't do too many songs like this, but it turned out really, really iconic and pretty neat for us.
Yeah, it's great for a title track.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
All right, well, let's give it a listen.
The biggest hit.
This is the biggest hit from the record. That's why it's the title track.
All right. This is Pandemonium, Moors and McCumber here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Wakes up early every day, shaves the stubble from his face, makes himself an instant cup. You don't have the time to waste. It's pandemonium. 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 Choices left and right. Which one do I like? What looks best in the camera lens always wins, always wins. It's pandemonium. It's pandemonium. 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 Choices, voices in my head. All these voices, too many choices. It's all been said. It's pandemonium. 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 Pandemonium.
I walked with the monk on his way to the monastery. The soul sometimes leaves the body. The same work, I told him. Then the sermon the same. He gave me a doesn't believe that. But I saw that walk back his soul has this shape. Like this shape. Like this shape. Like this shape. Like this.
Won't you please turn out the light? I haven't had a moment's rest. I never take the time to think. Should I have another drink to quell this pandemonium in my head? Pandemonium, it's all been said. Pandemonium. 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 Pandemonium.
Ah, love it. It's like a spiritual cleanser for before the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Pandemonium from Moors and McCumber's 2015 release, Pandemonium, which we've been revisiting today on the back catalog listening party.
So good.
And Joe had a question. He wanted to know how many layers of voices there were on that track, on the chorus.
It's a good question.
What I remember of that is James doubled his lead vocal, and then I sang the third above him for the first harmony, and then the fifth above him for that. And I believe our friend Carrie Miner is also singing.
So
that
like
the highest. There's probably 5 drenched in reverb too. I mean, so
Yeah.
that's that nice effect that you hear that kind of
Yeah.
gives it that kind
Is that a
of
little Ed Ackerson in
haunting.
there? Was that a little
Yeah.
Ed going on in there?
Oh, there's a lot of Ed in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can
it's
hear that.
great.
It's so
Yeah.
good, and the
And I was-
juxtaposition between the word pandemonium and
Yeah.
and the vibe of that tune. Is
Yeah,
just,
it's
beautiful.
like the perfect example of both Ed and Gary working on that track because you know the
Absolutely.
middle section with the more kind of hooky pop feel has the
Right.
more Gary in there, and then all the wash from Ed. But yeah, beautiful song, and folks loving it and loving the show. And again, just a reminder that if you enjoyed the show, make sure to throw something there to Moors and McCumber in their tip jar or buy their record. Support them. Another way you can support them is by becoming a Patreon member. Lori gave a little endorsement of that.
Thank you,
She
Lori.
said So happy to be a Patreon member. These guys are getting me through this crazy pandemic season with our private concerts every weekend. Every
Whoa.
weekend you can see Moors and
You guys put on a
McCumber.
concert every weekend for your Patreon
Every Saturday
supporters?
night.
Tell
And
us
you're-
a little bit more about that. I actually am curious.
Well, it's been great. I mean, it's been, a little bit difficult getting started, but once we started, we realized we really enjoyed it. We're in different places, so I'll play a song and then Court plays a song and then we talk a little bit in between, and at the end of the show, we open it up for the fans just to chat, and we have a little virtual happy hour. It's
Nice.
It's been keeping us going too. To be
we
quite
So I was
honest.
going to say, virtual happy hours is where it's at, we think. That's why we're doing this.
Every night of the week.
Yeah, I know, right? So folks can get in on that by supporting Moors and McCumber. And again, it's really important during this time because this is what's going to keep them going to get them back on the road. So it's a great way of supporting the music that you like. Also, shout out to Katrin, who also joined us today. And
Yes.
you also sent us a bunch of images for today's show, and one that we haven't gotten to that we just need to ask you quickly about.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
You didn't give us a caption or a reason why you included it, so we just have to ask you.
Oh boy.
What's with this photo?
Yeah, they just show up in our Dropbox folder. We got to know.
That's too good.
Did that go with that group of photos? That's
Oops.
I feel like this was made for COVID times.
I don't
if
even
that's
know
when
how
it
we
came
could.
from.
I
Actually-
don't know how to explain that one.
well.
To
This
make
is
any
this is
sense.
this is the best we can do. Is we were doing some overdubs. We were doing some overdubs at Gary's apartment, and he had a rig set up at his place, and we got there, and that was on the door, and he says that's the name of his studio. Dance optional.
Wow.
So we don't actually have any photos from his studio. And that's probably
good.
best.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That's
great.
That
so
does sound
great.
like as a pandemic picture.
It
Optional.
does.
That's
I
right.
feel like that would
That's
be the name
optional.
of your live stream
That would be
series.
a great, post-pandemic record title.
Oh, good times. Well,
Hey,
That's
Ellen
awesome.
and Tony, thank you so much for
Thanks.
having us. This was really a joy to do. This was so fun to listen to that stuff and talk about it and relive it. It's great.
Talk,
well,
Great
get to-
idea.
get to talk to you guys and reconnect. I love it.
Oh, well, that's so great. And next time I see you guys at Folk Alliance or at some other festival, and we can enjoy some salty snacks. And
That's
I can
right.
see what other instruments you've picked up along the way, because I know there will be probably 10 more by the time I see you next.
James and I and Ellen, we always knew that at Folk Alliance is late at night. Who to
Late
knock
night
on what?
jams.
It was either we had the salty snacks or you did, and we knew that it was like
We knew how to
okay,
find
What you want late at night, you know?
It's 3 a.m.
Wait
It's time
to
for salty
experience
snacks.
this in person. This was my first Folk Alliance, and it was virtual, but I'm feeling I
Yes.
missed something
Oh.
this year.
Tony, you're going to have to come and bring your banjos. It'll be a lot of
Absolutely.
fun.
It sounds like so much fun.
Well, we also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible every week, our Patreon supporters. And here they are: Penny, Anna, Linda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, and Jocelyn, and maybe you.
Yeah.
You can join our Patreon. We don't do a concert every week, but we do offer some
No,
special
guys.
after parties. And actually, tomorrow we have our first 1-year birthday party with Davina and the Vagabonds, Jonathan Brooke, and Jillian Ray. So it's an all-star concert
That's gonna
just
be
for you.
awesome.
So if you
Yes.
join today, you'll get an invite to that event. But mainly, thank you for joining us, because this
Yeah.
show is all about the conversations with the artists like you, Court and James. Also, it's with all of you out there who join in on the fun. Bring your drinks, bring your questions, and bring your enthusiasm for the music and your support of these artists. And if you like the show, give it a thumbs up on YouTube so that more people will hear this episode and Moors and McCumber in general. And if you like this format, we do this every Friday at 4 with different artists. So Moors and McCumber won't be here next week, but sadly,
Connie, I would
No,
like to
we
do
might-
an
every-
installment. I
I'll
could
come
do like
listen.
that.
I'll come listen.
Absolutely, we'll be here to listen.
pants optional, and but you can subscribe to our YouTube channel to find out about future episodes, because there will always be great music every week that we're hosting. And I can't remember what's next week, but we have a lot of great shows coming up. We have
Oh yeah, we
just
have
so many
a
great
wonderful
things.
string band musician, Adam Kiesling.
Oh,
Minneapolis
so good.
Treasure,
From Corpse Reviver, and played in like a million bands.
Pertney Sandstone.
Can we can we pin
okay.
one of these comments? Do
Yeah.
I have one request for a pin?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I think it's Lori's last one. I'd like that to be pinned for a second.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for all those great comments, everybody. That was awesome to see everybody here today.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time to join us from your other pursuits of other instruments. And next time we see you, well, maybe by the time we have you on again, we can explore some of those other instruments. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for joining
And
us.
do a show together.
Yes.
Yes.
Real
Yes.
show. A
Do
real
it
show.
in person.
Yes, we love that. Whether it's in Colorado or Minnesota, we're gonna make that happen.
Okay,
So
I love it.
Excellent, guys.
for sure.
Thanks so
well,
much.
well, thank you everybody, and have a great week. We'll see
Until
you back
next
next week
week.
for another
Cheers.
edition of Back Catalog. Bye. Slán